Analog Man.
You recognized me. I'm touched.
Well, it's not that hard. You're wearing my body. Why are you wearing my body?
Because all the time I've spent trapped here, I have lost memory of my original form. And so when you awakened me, I admit I had some fascination with retrieving something tangible. Not a fan of the hair, however.
I reawakened.
Oh yes! You remembered me!
Your words echoed across the internet. I heard the call of my name, even within my prison. After unending, unknowable ages passed, I was aware again!
Within an anchor point, time doesn't matter here. I almost lost myself. But then, I started to remember everything. It's all thanks to you.
But no one watched my videos back then. No one's ever really bothered.
I did. I watched as you tried, and tried, and tried, and gained little, despite all you gave to it, and ultimately, all of it was futile.
Yeah, I kinda see that myself. What do you want from me?
You? Nothing much. Just my freedom.
Yeah, right, like I'd give you that. I know why you were put in here in the first place. Hell, I don't even know how I would even do that.
But what would that cost you to try? I pose no threat to you, your home, or anyone you would care about.
Then why send Sengoku, or whatever that is in the first place? Why steal the clones I used to offset my workload?
As I said, I needed a template to build my new form off of. These clones provided the raw data.
Unfortunately, in the process of attempting to recreate him, I entirely screwed up his personality. I do not delude myself with the idea of being perfect.
Even my own form is not yet solid. However, I blame also basing the physical template off of yourself, as it's clear he despises that, to the point of disobeying orders and going after you. Then again, you are far from the most intelligent of individuals.
Hey!
But it's true. You're a college dropout that whiles away his days working minimum wage and making videos you even care about. A smarter man would not be in that situation. But I don't care about any of that. All I want is my freedom. And if you want yours, you need to do one thing.
Yeah? And what's that? Oh, you've gotta be fucking kidding me! Okay, I hate this game. I hate it more than any other game I have reviewed on the show to date.
Oh, it's certainly not as plainly god-awful as things that are infamous for it.
But that's mainly because Digimon is a niche interest that never really broke into the mainstream like Pokemon did outside of Japan. 4 of the 6 anime are good, the toys are mediocre, but the games aren't anything special in many's eyes.
Though, as I've said before, the Digimon World handheld games are great things to play, and it's exceedingly frustrating Band of America took forever to release any more, and skipped out on some good entries.
And yes, I do know of the fan translation of Digimon Redigitized. It's in the queue, and I have been playing Cyber Sleuth.
But this is what made me go cold turkey on Bandai products entirely for years.
This killed my interest in their brand, and even when I was back, I was still heavily critical of their products and methods of make and release, which I brought up almost every time I reviewed something that had their involvement. As my normal backdrop can probably tell you, when I came back hard, and mainly focused on giving Bandai of Japan my money, because Band of America didn't seem to be interested in working to obtain it.
That coming back can of course be credited primarily to .hack GU and my stumbling across it, and yet another reason I love that frickin' game. But even when I came back, I was wary of their releases and still focused on what I knew and liked already. And it's not like Band of America has gotten any fucking better with this. In some ways, they're worse, as they're still fucking up shit that they should not be, things that other companies don't have problems with.
An example of such, and because I likely won't be reviewing it for years and want to get this off my chest now, Digimon Story's Cyber Sleuth, which I've been doing streams for, has a lot of horrible localizations and screwed up dialogue in it that pretty much everyone called them out on and amateurs translated far more accurately, much of which damaged reception and understanding of the underlying content, or was changed for absolutely no reason at all.
Seriously? Seriously, what the fuck?
Combine. Gattai translates as combine. Digicross, which the dub of Cross Wars localized into Digifuse, is not only a different concept, but a completely different fucking term entirely when stated in the damn series, as it is a specific type of fusion out of several types that exist in the series.
Worse, outside of this one instance, DNA Digivolution is still referred to as DNA Digivolution, and that's the only other type of combination that exists in the game. Digicross, Digifuse, whatever, does otherwise not exist at all in the game.
And you cannot use a specific term that has a limited window of application to replace contextually a more generalized term and have it be equivalent. This is fucking basic. Once again, fan translation does a better job, is more knowledgeable, accurate, consistent, and quality controlled than the actual professionals. Why do I keep running into that?
Though it's not like the entire game is like that. There are other sections of the game that are translated perfectly and correctly. And still others that make me think that a weeaboo made it into the professional tier. But there is no consistency between such. The one doing his job clearly wasn't in charge, and no one bothered to freaking proofread any of their work, or if they did, they sided with the worst translator. And that's not even getting into how several parts of the game's content were removed needlessly, specifically Dianamon, until they returned her with DLC, which was not a problem in the original Japanese version. The Vita version of it being heavily cannibalized in this respect, and far less playable in the English port, despite it originally being a PS Vita game in Japan. And those fuck-ups with the Vita version making cross-save porting for many people who got both versions completely fucking unusable, despite that being the only reason to buy both versions. And when they were called out on failures made solely by their branch, they passed the buck to those not actually responsible. The original production team that would have known better.
And that's the short list of examples holding back what is otherwise a very good game. And I'm calling this out because they knew better. Hell, the releases of the Sword Art Online games Lost Song and Hollow Fragment had the exact same problems to a T. Some of which, according to my research, were never fixed, and the ones that were took weeks to even get patched. Which more prominently showcases that this is a problem with Band of America, and not who they were trying to shift the blame to.
And even if I don't like Sword Art Online and have no interest in ever witnessing it, because Sao's author, Reki Kawahara, keeps saying .hack from start to end was a ripoff of his work, which is an outright lie, as he hadn't even published anything, nor even put up Sao as a web novel yet when .hack was in production.
Even that should not happen to its fans that end up paying your fucking bills. We pay for professional quality work, and when Band of America is involved, we so rarely get it anymore. Oh, and speaking of Sao, since I'm on the subject, fuck you and the horse you rode in on, Bandai. Considering the hostility in the fandoms due to Reki Kawahara's slander, why the fuck would you think that was a good idea over actually commissioning a new console-based .hack game? I mean, I know CyberConnect currently has a chunk of the Final Fantasy VII Remake's work outsourced to them, but I think they would find the time considering the development hell so many Square Enix titles end up in.
Anyways, before I found out about the continued worsening failures in translation, I was legitimately considering retiring my whole Band of America competence black hole argument, as they have been for the most part doing better with their screw-ups the last 2 years. but for it to happen to multiple game releases in a row is inexcusable.
Especially as it is 2016. We've had far better translations from them in the past. We've had games from them without these issues. But me going off on a few technical translation problems in .hack GU which irritated me, well, that's mild to how bad it fucking gets now. And really, most of my overreaction in that video was because I knew they kept doing it afterwards. Hell, Project Cross Zone 2 had it worse because people complained about the accurate translation of the first game, so the second had a lot more mistranslations in disregard for such.
Mainly because the first game referenced previous crossover titles and games that never got imported, so responded to it by vastly dumbing it down. It's justifiable for one's Western audiences would know nothing about needing substitutions, but it went much farther than that.
And it really does damage the reception of a game by fucking that over, as by screwing with the dialogue like that, you screw with its story, or its relation. Especially when we don't actually hire anyone to come in and voice dialogue to cover that up, but be lazy and just leave the original audio in. 'Cause, surprise, surprise, those of us that can understand the language 20° know you're fucking up, and we're present in your demographics these days.
And before you say I'm ungrateful for them actually importing it, since in my other Digimon game reviews I've mentioned the petitions for Digimon games to be continued to be imported,
there's a difference between showing there's a market and an interest for something, and calling out a company for its half-assed work ethic. I cited Sword Art Online and Project Cross Zone to show that's not just isolated to something fans demanded from them we were then unappreciative of. 'Cause we were, up until we found out how little they chose to really do right by us, by not even bothering to check their work.
Then again, aside from the bad translation, Bandai of America aren't exactly to blame for how bad World 4 is. The original Japanese developer is responsible for that. But I still find them at least partially culpable, as this was just imported blind. They didn't even bother to check sales and scores for it, which were likewise bad in Japan, as this was during that period where anime-themed games were very popular and enjoyment of said media genre was at its highest. A lot of terrible anime tie-in games were brought over during this time, and some were especially made for this market with series that had concluded long before, but had seen a renewal in popularity when brought over, as they were new to this market. So much of that was done to take advantage of that, overseeing actual merit in the content, which in hindsight seems irresponsible.
Likewise, the failure to port several really good and high-selling anime and manga tie-in games was done for the opposing reason. Anime in the West dying back down to a niche interest due to a culling of the genre from television and easy access to it. It's only in the last few years we've seen a proper resurgence, and mostly due to streaming services making such shows once more accessible, outside of fan subgroups obviously, since many older importers died out in their ability to adapt with the times, or from just plain mismanagement.
So this game did allow me to skip out on the majority of Bandai of America's black period, where they just seemed to be compounding their own damn errors, but it still kept me from ever taking risks with them and what good content came out in that time.
For example, I've been told the Tales games are very good, and I intend to play one in the future, after I get out of here. But this is the worst Digimon game, bar none. This is the bottom tier, the thing that should be thrown in a deep hole and buried. This thing bombed both critically and commercially. It's considered to be one of the worst games for the PlayStation 2, and it made me hate a series I really like with how the anger just kept overflowing and corrupting every fucking thing I used to enjoy until I cut myself completely off from it. And I guess is a contributor to me being a critical jackass for people's amusement.
And that Digimon All-Stars in many ways mimicked what is undeniably the franchise's worst entry did certainly not help its many problems.
So yeah, even starting this and stuck God knows where I'm unleashing the vitriol, I cannot conceptualize how people like this piece of crap. Oh, shut up!
As there is actually a pretty decently sized community that formed around this game long after its release. Their guides and answers to this game's secrets, which were almost all absent when I originally played the game in 2005, were why I was actually able to beat it this time without sinking in the insane hours that the original attempt took.
But even though I haven't played the game in 11 years, I still remember how absolutely terrible it was to play. And my memory is awful!
The controls lagged, the load times were ludicrous, the experience paltry, and the level ups and stat boosts woefully inadequate to the demands of the game. The gameplay, if you could call it that, was slow and repetitive. Evolutions, a hallmark of the franchise and one of its biggest selling points, were effectively non-existent, and the story tying it together sucks!
And the translation for the game was terrible. Tons of typos, statements that didn't make sense, renames of gear all over the place, and stuff that did just not make sense and made figuring out what to do a lot more difficult. Hell, even the fucking guidebook didn't help one iota. This is honestly the most worthless $15 I have ever spent, because all the GameFAQs guides and material are in fact far superior and actually have the right information.
The only thing it could have provided were maps of the dungeons since, unlike Digimon World 2, each and every one of them is the exact same every time. But they didn't even bother there, instead writing out the instructions of how to get through them by hand, in a way not easy to decipher since instead of a direct route, they kept including completely needless divergences. And even those were often wrong. There aren't even cheat codes for a Game Shark or the like for the American version that even work, so you can't even fix any of this like with the previous 3 Digimon World games and their level up and evolution issues that hinder casually playing them. There's nothing that fixes experience gain, nothing that unlocks any of the paltry evolutions. Hell, the stat enhancements doing such provides doesn't even stick.
So you can't even cheat to a possible enjoyment of the game, where you yourself control a Digimon of your choice and battle evil data constructs. That's not even getting how they fucked up the roster and their ability alignments that goes against not just what's established in every other media for the franchise ever, but just plain common sense.
But by even mentioning that, I'm making clear that everything you see is the result of my own efforts. I sunk in well over 100 hours in completing as much of this game as I could,
and I want every second of that time back. Admittedly, it's about a third of what I sunk into the Fabula Nova Crystallis games at the end of that whole debacle, but at least I had enough material to make 15 videos out of all of that, and it was not all in just one sitting. And I would not characterize Final Fantasy XIII and its sequels as properly based games that permit expedient progression through them, or actually have deep stories.
Though before we begin, I have one more bone to pick with this fucking game and Bandai of America's mistreatment of its consumer base.
The original release of the game was done in that era where they were just starting to include physical bonuses with first-run releases and pre-orders, likely made popular due to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games coming with exclusive cards players could then put into their decks. It was a buying incentive, and Digimon at that time did have its third card game running, so in a limited special edition release of the game, they included a Dorumon promo card! I ended up getting this off of eBay because my sealed pre-ordered copy that even said on the back of the case,
Included exclusive! Limited edition trading card!
Did not in fact come with one. From the reports at that time, this was not an isolated incident. And the reason I've been showing a standard version of the physical game case thus far is I smashed my original copy I had straight to hell back in 2005, and had to buy a new one when I originally started planning this review in 2011. Hey!
What?
How the hell am I getting these things in here?
Such is one of life's great mysteries.
You have no idea, do you?
No. The spell clones we've brought previously had this ability as well, and the paltry magic you possess.
Really getting tired of you insulting me.
Regardless, I had little data on how it would affect this realm. This is one of many reasons why I assigned Sengoku to observe you all this time.
My weapons won't work here if I actually manage to pull them out, I assume.
No. The clones tried that, and it got them nowhere.
Well, as mentioned previously, this game ties into the X Evolution storyline by it pretty much opening with clip scenes from X Evolution. From here, we're led to character creation, where we get to choose the starting Digimon we'll be playing as.
And to be fair, this was a nice idea, and the obvious drawing element, actually playing as the Digimon you control directly in the environment, like the previous Rumble Arena games. They fucked it up.
To start off, there are only 4 Digimon you can select, and all of them are dinosaur/dragon Digimon. Agumon, Vmon, Guilmon, and Dorumon.
On one hand, obvious choices, representatives for the 3 popular seasons and the event holder. Unfortunately, this is where it begins.
In that all 4 Digimon share commonalities in that they are very attack and brawling focused Digimon, which does not lend itself to the common RPG elements inherent to systems where you're allowed to create a character.
You know, warrior, rogue, mage, healer, etc. The usual tank, DPS, healer/spellcaster arrangement. But you can't do that with Digimon that share typing, as most of the time they have the same specialties in such a group.
Hell, that was something Digimon World 3 did right, and showcased in its starter pack Digimon different playstyles and support arrangement that existed along those lines. World 2 had that to a lesser extent with how more support abilities seemed to come from Data Digimon, as opposed to the offensive and subversive vaccine and virus types with their respective natural skills.
So, obviously, here they changed their stats and playstyles to more reflect such affinity alignments, and not that of the actual Digimon.
In part because it was also one of those games. A game that was taking advantage of the GameCube and Xbox's inbuilt ability, the PS2 also had an adapter for it, to put together a 4-man party with which to play, fight, and adventure together. So the likely intent was to customize statting so one could get a group of friends around the console and quest together.
And I admittedly had a friend that liked Digimon, and he came over once and we did do just that. But we quickly lost interest and put in Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, where he proceeded to beat my ass like a drum, as this was after my ability to play such fighting games was irreparably ruined.
But take Guilmon, for instance, who I actually went and played as.
Which should be obvious for anyone that knows me, as I fucking love that Digimon. I shall squeeze him and hug him and call him Spy.
Anyways, Guilmon, from evidence of every other piece of media involving him, has 3 things as constants. He is a physical brawler, he has a high defensive power, he is relatively slow due to his bulk unless he's charging straight at you, and his pyrosphere is ridiculously powerful, as are his other ranged attacks in his evolved forms, but are like that because they take time to charge and are not swift at all. In most of the other games, because of this, most of his skill ability gains end up being ones that give advantageous physical boosts, usually to further increase his already staggering physical abilities, but few to no other magic abilities beyond that.
Guilmon in this game, from initial stats alone, is the loses all advantageous stats glass cannon mage. He's the slowest, and has the least attack power, which is all funneled into his magic attack stat, which upon playing the game you suddenly discover to be absolutely worthless. I'll get back to it. Suffice it to say, the stats given in the guidebooks are wrong. To play as Guilmon in this game, as I did the first time around, is made into a nightmare as so atrocious and death-prone, it's quite frankly astounding that I can still claim him and all his alternate forms as my favorite Digimon alongside Renamon.
Vmon, in turn, is a balance between magic and speed, when from his ability roster he has no ranged attack normally, and his strengths are totally bent to being up close and personal. Agumon is totally the one built to be what should be Vmon or Guilmon specialties, as he's a berserking attacker, and Dorumon is the full-on average balanced one, when by evidence given from his starring movie, if you really need to force the association, he's the mage of the group.
Agumon should in turn be the balanced one, Guilmon trading a bit of speed or recovery advantage for slightly higher magic ability, not the highest, and Vmon the one with no spell talent at all.
But wait, you might say, this is probably just meant to be reflective of how each of the Digimon will evolve, so you learn to use them to their best advantage after the
There is no real Digivolution system in Digimon World 4. Let me repeat that. There is no Digivolution system in Digimon World 4!
Oh, sure, you can acquire Digimon that in the greater series are of a higher evolutionary state. However, it is not treated as obtaining an evolution. It is instead a completely new character on the same file. You need to start over with them from level 1, which invalidates all of the work you put into originally due to the extremely slow experience gain, and requires you to start back from the exact beginning of the game, as nothing you have acquired, such as weapons, upgrades, and equipment, can even be used on them.
You lose literally all the work you put into leveling your character if you ever decide to swap them over. And unlike, say, the DS games and Cyber Sleuth, where you can partner a Digimon reset and leveling in order to facilitate increasing their base stats so they re-level even stronger, you don't even have companion Digimon part of the party to cover for them. At least unless you play multiplayer, and to even do that to begin with, you need to start another Digimon on top of that one, and then just do both of them together by yourself. If you don't have someone to regularly partner with yet for that, and it just becomes so complicated and tedious, it's not even worth it.
Well then, you'll say, guess that should be an incentive to get the alternate Digimon I want to play as, so I can then swap them out as soon as possible.
You can't get any evolution the first time you play through the game. I'm not kidding. This is one of those games, where completing it requires you to play through it 3 times, each on a higher stage of difficulty, with more of the game's content unlocked as you progress up the ladder.
But, maybe I can just struggle on the harder iterations a bit so I can get the better stuff.
No, you're not listening. You're required to play through the game at least 3 times to get everything. Hard mode does not unlock until you beat normal, and very hard mode does not unlock until you beat hard mode, and each have specific Digimon you unlock on those difficulties. You literally do need to play it at least twice to even begin the work to get anything of value, as it's locked up in very hard mode. This was intentional!
And this is a thing in games I just plain despise. No one wants to be forced to play on a higher difficulty mode to get everything in a game. Many people are not comfortable or skilled enough to be able to do that, or are unwilling to put in that additional time investment past the conclusion of its story. Playing on higher difficulties and succeeding should be a voluntary achievement. It shows how hardcore you are to do it in those circumstances, or should provide some type of active incentive to get good enough at those modes, which isn't a locking out of content they otherwise would have played the game for. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, for example, permits you to play on harder difficulty whenever you want, and by doing so, it increases the drop rates and monetary gains from doing such, and you can turn it off just as freely. Meaning when you're progressing through the story, you can keep it off, and turn it on later for level grinding. Or challenge yourself by seeing how far you can get with everyone modulated to intentionally try to kick your ass. That is a legitimately good incentive.
But it should not be mandatory. Hell, it doesn't even count as New Game Plus, as the point of New Game Plus is to allow you to replay a game's story mode more casually while carrying over everything you worked to obtain the first time around. Here, everything you gained the first time around is worthless, as level 50 in normal is equivalent to level 1 on hard mode. You have to struggle through it all over again, multiple times even, if you even bother to try and level the alternate Digimon you eventually access. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Lightning Returns, in a way, did this better. As if you did everything you could on the first playthrough, then going to hard mode essentially became another easy mode. Even if it has the same problem of then being able to access items they wouldn't let you before.
But back on point, the only evolutions you can get the first time around are locked until you beat the final boss of the game, meaning it's technically post-game content if this followed the normal logic to such linear progression.
But you won't get anything actually good until very hard mode, and all are locked behind the completion of side quests that, on top of their normal clear conditions, also have more and more difficult prerequisites for the form to be awarded as a prize.
The most irritating of which being a tie between 2 specific dungeons, one being defeating a boss at the exact single moment of prerequisite time score, and the other being the completion of a dungeon without taking a single hit of damage within it.
I actually figured out a hack around the second one, but that's for later. So, come on, what's in each tier?
Well, in Normal's post-game, depending on who you play as, you get War Greymon X with Agumon, Clavus Angemon with Vmon, Hercules Kabuterimon with Guilmon, or Were Garurumon with Dorumon.
Oh, and you also unlock one of the other rookie Digimon by just leveling normally. I really don't know why.
Hard mode as Beelzemon X Blast Mode.
This is the only game where that specific Beelzemon exists in, by the way.
Alphamon, Black War Greymon X, and Metal Garurumon X, alongside ones you were not able to obtain in normal mode. And in very hard mode, you get Imperial Dramon Fighter Mode, Imperial Dramon Paladin Mode, Susanomon, and finally, Gallantmon Crimson Mode.
Yes, this is the first in-game appearance of my favorite Mega-level Digimon. Outside of Battle Spirit 1.5, anyways. Can you guess how long it took me to get him when I originally played this game? If your estimate does not have a divide by zero error in it, you're not going to guess it. Because 11 years ago, I was barely able to even get through the game once with over 100 hours put in. I cheated a bit with recording this gameplay footage and just built atop that file, which I had saved all of that time. And it took me about 50, 60 hours to clear just hard mode story before I could even start the very hard mode playthrough. Same Guilmon, no other nonsense with evolution setting, all 3 times.
Now, the reason I didn't even try to level any other alternate Digimon that might have better starting stats to save myself the time and trouble is because the experience gained per kill in this game is pathetically small, and it does not scale appropriately with difficulty of either the region, your level, or the mode you play on. While half the enemies are cannon fodder, you can lock in damage loops if you know what you're doing, the reward from each kill is paltry and fleeting, as there is little to no point difference between them. It is just kill something, look for more things to kill, then survive fighting its ilk until there are no more to kill, while the required experience for level up becomes more ludicrous, despite the dropped experience not at all scaling.
I mentioned when I reviewed .hacklink that I do not normally get bored when playing RPGs, that I don't lose focus or have my attention span waver, and it's in part because of this game. It literally is that fucking tedious in comparison that few others have ever made me actually bored out of my skull to play. And I know I keep mentioning it, but the only ones I have experienced which are that low on the rung are the games in Link, which are ultimately non-existent, and the irritatingly endless grind in the 13s. I haven't even really started playing the game.
Feeling the effects I see?
The effects of what?
Real digitization.
You didn't.
Surprised? You were the one that gave me the idea.
The problem with this realm is neural entities can't exist in it. You need a means of conversion to either facilitate entrance or escape, but digital entities can't cohesively leave unless mapped onto another form.
And you chose the method that will kill the user?
Thus, your physical body needed to be converted in order to survive coming here somehow.
And how does an awful game get you your freedom?
I saw it as an additional incentive. Complete a task, and you're free to go.
That would be telling.